The Edmonton Oilers played their worst game of the season on Long Island. I'm not worried.
You are Locked On Oilers, your daily podcast on the Edmonton Oilers, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to this Friday edition of Locked On Oilers. I am your host, Nick Zararis. This is my fourth NHL season as a host here on the Locked On Podcast Network, and I want to thank everybody that is making Locked On Oilers their first listen of the day. Locked On Oilers is a part of the Locked On Podcast Network where we've got your team covered every single day. Today's show is brought to you by our friends over at Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code Locked On NHL for $20 off your first purchase. So today's episode, we're going to walk through the Oilers' loss at the hands of the New York Islanders. And I am sure, as if you've listened to me do the show at any point, if you're an everydayer, I will inadvertently call the Islanders the Oilers and the Oilers the Islanders no less than 5 to 6 times over the course of this episode. So I'm going to do my best to not trip over that. But the Oilers falling 4-2 out on Long Island in a really ugly game. So we'll start out there. I just want to talk a little bit about the operation, what felt off about the game tonight. Our second segment will pivot to maybe some of the accommodations, some of the lines we saw, the results they got. And then our final segment, we'll tee up the game Saturday against the Devils. We'll talk a little bit about these prolonged road trips, clunky starts, and things of that nature. So to get the conversation rolling, I think it's important that we talk about the big picture. And in the scope of 82 games, one is not particularly important. One out of conference game, very unimportant. But what's key is learning, understanding, and maybe trying to grow. And this is the first game the Oilers have played all year where I would say the Oilers played poorly. And just outright, the operation was not clean tonight. So many turnovers. In that first period, the Evan Bouchard turnovers are brutal. And look, I'm going to ride or die for my guy Bouch, but sometimes you just wonder what's going on between his ears because a player that talented should not be making the mistakes he is. The Bo Horvat shorthanded goal is terrible. That should not happen. And look, I understand that's a really good play. And credit where it's due. I know the Islanders are not a very talented hockey team. I know the Islanders are not very good. They're not expected to be very good. The Oilers did not play well. The Islanders sensed the Oilers were not playing well. And the Islanders pushed and pushed and pushed. And this is a team with Horvat, Barzal, and then 9 to 10 third and fourth line players around them. I like what I saw of Matthew Schaefer, and I'll talk about Schaefer a little bit later in the game. If this is your first effort, I should say, foray into watching Schaefer play, I was pretty impressed with what I saw. But a game like this, you have a lot of factors. And as a veteran team, as a team with high expectations, you expect the Oilers to be able to overcome those the circumstantial factors. Like aside from the game, you're coming off an off day in New York. You've been in New York since Monday. You've been here Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, today, Thursday. You'll be here tomorrow because you're playing the Devils on Saturday. You probably will not leave the New York area until late Saturday night or maybe Sunday morning if you don't want to squeeze in a practice ahead of your game, the next game. But when you think about it, and look, this is not news. This is not rocket science. You put wealthy people in a city like New York, LA, Vegas, Miami, Chicago on an off day with a full day to do whatever they would like other than practice. And guys are going to have fun. And look, I don't begrudge professional athletes for being people. Lord knows in my free time, I like to have fun. Unfortunately, for a lot of us, having fun comes at the expense of our sleep schedules. Fun things are happening in the hours you're supposed to be in your second or third hour of REM sleep, and you have to make that decision. And look, I'm not accusing the Oilers of going out and partying all night last night. That's not what I'm saying. But I'm saying that guys go out, they have fun, and you get a little comfortable. You're not as in your routine yet. And I do think the scattered nature of the start of the Oilers schedule with a lot of days off here and there, no back-to-backs yet, I think that puts you in a position where guys are still trying to ramp up, where they're still trying to get themselves into the routines and rhythms of a regular season. I think that's real. And I think the turnovers, I think the clunky special teams, in particular the power play, in particular that 6-5 situation at the end of the game with the empty net, it just never felt like the Oilers really had it all the way together. And look, I know the Oilers had a majority of the possession. I know they had a good chunk of they had one more high danger chance, and I assume they had a slight edge in expected goals at 5-on-5. They played okay under the hood. But watching the game, the turnovers, the passes to no one, the offensive zone entries that didn't lead into anything. And yes, there are going to be sequences, there are going to be shifts naturally where you are going to enter the offensive zone. And the desired outcome of your shift is just get the puck in deep long enough for your guys to change whoever's out there. There are some shifts where that's all you're going to be asked to do, and I understand that. But in a game where the Oilers trailed for a good chunk of it, the effort, the attention to detail was not there in terms of creating offense. And yes, when you have McDavid and Draisaitl, you're afforded a little bit more leeway. As poorly as the Oilers were playing for much of this game, I still felt like they were going to win. I still felt like they were going to find one or two McDavid goals. They would catch Scott Mayfield. They would catch Matthew Schaefer. They would catch Tony DeAngelo. They would catch one of those Islander defenders in isolation. They'd tie the game. They'd drag it to overtime, and they'd win in overtime. Because if you'll recall, that's what the Oilers did to the Islanders twice last year. They beat them both times in overtime. This is a really good hockey team in the Oilers that was playing a team that hadn't won a game yet, that has I would say, an antsy fan base that was playing in maybe a 75, 80% full arena tonight. And what's probably going to be a long season for the Islanders. I think most parties involved understand what the situation is there out on Long Island. But the Oilers made the Islanders' life kind of easy tonight. And I talk about the idea of putting guys on an island and making them make decisions. And it felt like the Islanders did a really good job of forcing the Oilers to make plays. And the more you force defenders who are by trade not as good of puck handlers as forwards into making decisions, even if it's just, okay, I need to rim this puck, I need to alley-oop this puck, I need to get rid of this puck, the more you can force them into those decisions, the more turnovers you can force. The penalties the Oilers took were lazy penalties. And that's the thing. Sometimes you got to take a penalty. You got to stop a guy's progress. You got to break up a scoring chance. You got to do whatever it takes. And you're going to take a penalty to do that. And that's just the reality. Sometimes you're beat. But high sticks, holds, those are not great. Those are unnecessary penalties to take. And I'll be curious to see how Chris Knoblauch handles David Tomaszek, another game where he was right there. He had good chances, but he also took a really bad penalty a really bad penalty. We are going to take our first break on today's edition of Locked On Oilers. When we come back, I'm going to go under the hood and explain some of the underlying numbers in this game and what I think they mean in relation to the Oilers' performance. Hockey season is here, and nothing beats that feeling of walking up the steps, coming through the tunnel, and getting hit with that arena light, seeing the ice, seeing the scoreboard, hearing the music at a decibel that in any other situation would be annoying. But let's be real, getting tickets to games can be a pain in the butt. Between waiting in queues, surprise fees, and prices that jump right before checkout, it's easy to get frustrated when all you want to do is cheer on your team. And that's where our friends at Game Time come in, the app that gives fans the advantage. It is your ultimate hack for scoring amazing NHL tickets, fast, easy, and stress-free. You guys know I went to Rangers Oilers on Tuesday. I will be in the building tomorrow for Devils Oilers. I'm very happy I'll get to see Connor and the guys one more time this year. Hopefully can make a trip up to Edmonton later in the year, but that's work permitting. And going to games, especially to support the road team, it's one of those great feelings. It's one of those great treats you get to have as a real hockey fan, especially as a guy who just loves going to games. And the only place I'm getting tickets when I go to games is from Game Time. Game Time has the panoramic seat view, the best feature when you're buying tickets. There are no surprises. You know exactly the angles. You know the view of the scoreboard. You know where in the arena you're going to be placed before you buy your tickets. Take the guesswork out of buying NHL tickets with Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONNHL for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. That is code LOCKEDON NHL for $20 off. Swipe, tap, ticket, go. Thank you so much to everybody who is hanging out on this Friday edition of Locked On Oilers, getting into the weekend. This week went really long. Down here in the States, we had off on Monday for Indigenous people / Columbus Day, depending on what state in the country you live in. But even with Monday off, it felt like this week has gone very slow. And I've kind of been chomping at the bit for hockey, and the Oilers schedule has been really paced out. The Rangers can't score a goal, as you're probably aware as well. But this game kind of stunk, and I feel bad because I just want to see the Oilers get where they want to. And one of the things you have to understand, and frankly, one of the things you have to come to terms with as a sports fan, especially as a hockey fan, you know, with a long regular season, to some degree, you have to fall in love with the process. And so much of hockey is failing. So much of hockey is making mistakes, is learning what you can and can't get away with. And the Oilers played a C- game tonight. And I know they had more shots on goal. They had slightly more possession, one more high danger chance, like 0.5 more expected goals. Against a team like the Islanders, that is not very good. And just candidly, we can say that. The Islanders are not a very good hockey team. For the Oilers to come out and play the way they did tonight, it's really frustrating because this was an opportunity to make progress. You played a pretty poor game against the Rangers, and by virtue of your goalie, Stuart Skinner, who was really good on Tuesday and was really good again tonight. I cannot stress enough that tonight was not Stu's fault. Stu, I thought, played about as good a game as you're going to get from him. And I really, 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 really wanted it to work out. And he was keeping them in this game for a while. You know, it's funny. I was texting one of my friends who's an Islander fan, who was at the game, and he was sitting behind some tourists, some guys from, I think he said, the Netherlands. And he texted me, he said, the guys in front of me said, wow, the Skinner guy is really good. And that's the beauty of goaltending. Stu came into this year as much adversity as anybody. The goal he gives up against Calgary, that third goal, is the stinker of all stinkers. And then he doesn't play on Saturday, they win. He plays on Tuesday, he's really good. Tonight, he was really good. And you got caught out in rough situations. And one of the real telltale signs, and this is a working theory, I've had this for a while, I've definitely said it on the show before, but if you're an everydayer, you've heard this, but if you're new around here, transition goals, when you get caught out in those 2-on-1s or just the players attacking the net, even if it's 2-on-2, those are plays of breakdowns, of mistakes. Whereas if you have prolonged time in the offensive zone, you're cycling, you're jamming, that's where you kind of get into an outworked, outplayed situation because there's a lot more leverage. And look, I understand there's a lot more factors at play. Hockey has the most variables of any sport. It is why it is the highest variance sport. But at a certain point, you got to just put your hands up and say, we're not doing well. And I do not think the Oilers played as good a game as they probably should have. You know, the Islanders are a really poor defensive team, and Schaefer's pretty good. Like, I was really impressed with what I saw from Matthew Schaefer tonight, what I've seen from him so far. He's gotten 4 points in 4 games. The Islanders picked up their first win of the season tonight. So the forward combinations you saw tonight, the most common one you saw was Roslovic, Nugent-Hopkins, and Draisaitl. 11-10 scoring chances, 7-6 shots on goal. Leon had the one even strength goal. even effectively at expected goals, and they were out high danger chance. Then at 5-on-5, Podkolzin, Frederick Kapanen, really good minutes. I frankly, I talked about this the other day when we were talking about the Chris Knoblauch hierarchy of forward trust. That's kind of your ideal third line. Like, you would like one of those guys to have a bit more finishing talent. In an ideal world, Frederick, Kapanen, or Podkolzin would be like 12, 13% shooter. You want your equivalent to what Blake Coleman was on that Tampa Bay Lightning team in 2020 and 2021, where Blake Coleman on a bad team is a second liner. On a good team, Blake Coleman's a third liner. And that's the type of player the Oilers are really missing from this group, especially for that bottom six, which, to be fair, I don't think is playing poorly. I do want to emphasize that. I don't think the Oilers' bottom six is playing poorly, specifically from a metric standpoint, but you need guys who can finish. And possession, and just like possession is 9/10 of the law in court, possession is 9/10 of the hockey game. You can have the puck a ton. You can have 50 shots on goal and the other team can only have 30. But if those 30 are more dangerous, that becomes more valuable. And I know this is early stages. I know Chris Knoblauch is still trying to get a feel for how he wants to use these guys. And I was very happy to see Mangiapane out there with McDavid and Draisaitl at the end of the game trying to score. I think I really like what I've seen from Mangiapane so far. And look, hand up, I've been a Mangiapane guy for a long time. If you're an everydayer, you've heard me talking about this all summer. This is the exact type of toolsy player you want that can play anywhere in your lineup, and he's going to put you in a good position. But tonight, and we'll tie up our second segment on this note, teams fall apart and teams are clunky when it becomes guys needing to make individual plays, when it's guys skating into the offensive zone 1-on-4 and turning the puck over, when it's guys gaining the offensive zone with speed and there's no trailers, it's guys doing the hard work of gaining the offensive zone with speed, looking up, panning, and not having anywhere to go with the puck because there's no puck support. It's cycle passes to nobody. It's a defenseman up at the point, half-heartedly sending a puck up the wall, down below to go below the goal line to the other team because there's no attacking player for you to pass the puck to, and you are getting lazy. And look, this is a game that most of the time the Oilers probably pull out of their butts. It's fine. You write it off. But I do think losing is important. I do think losing helps, especially early in the season when you are trying to figure out what you can and can't do. And the Oilers learned a lesson tonight. They are a better team than the Islanders. I have no reservation in saying that. They did not play like it tonight, and that's why they lost. We are going to take our second and final break on today's edition of Locked On Oilers. When we come back, we'll set the table for the Devils game over the weekend, what I'm looking for, and a whole lot more. The NFL season is here, and FanDuel has an offer you don't want to miss, because right now, new FanDuel customers can bet just $5 and they'll get $300 in bonus bets if you win. That's right. Pick a bet, put down just $5, and if it hits, you'll unlock $300 in bonus bets to use on the FanDuel app. I love using FanDuel because there are so many ways to play. You can build parlays for squad rides with your friends. If you're going to watch a game together, you pick 2 or 3 things within the game, player props, and you have something to root for together. Or if you're watching the game and you feel the momentum shifting underfoot, a big turnover, a big scoring play, and you want to get in on the comeback too, FanDuel's live betting makes it happen. Whether you're a casual fan or love diving into the weeds, FanDuel makes the game day experience so much more exciting. We got a London game this week. The Rams, 9 hours from their home base in LA, over in London, playing the Jaguars, are 3-point favorites. And then we might get JJ McCarthy back in Minnesota this weekend, Sunday, 1:00. The Eagles going up to Philadelphia, or maybe we'll see Carson Wentz against his former team, which is an interesting subplot to dive into. So FanDuel has one question. What are you waiting for? Visit FanDuel.com, download the FanDuel app for your chance at $300 in bonus bets if your first $5 bet wins. Thank you so much to everybody who is hanging out on this Friday edition of Locked On Oilers ahead of the weekend. And man, I can't wait. I am going to stare at the clock no less than 200 times throughout the course of the day on today in hopes of the clock moving faster, like Vito up in New Hampshire in that one episode of Sopranos where he kept telling himself, surely it's got to almost be lunchtime. Maybe lunchtime might be right now and only 5 minutes have gone by. That's how some Fridays feel at work. But when it comes to work and the Oilers, last year, the Oilers went to New Jersey and they played a score impacts game. The Devils got out to a lead. They held on for dear life. The Oilers cycled the puck for what felt like the entire third period, and they did not mount the comeback. They did not win the game. I want to see the Oilers find a quick start. And yes, in an ideal world, a quick start is an early goal. They have been a little hard to come by, especially at even strength. I know the power play, the 6-on-5, it definitely needs work. I think something that really jumped out to me, especially on the power play, is the amount of static play. And what I mean by that, when you're on the power play, and I say this all the time, this is one of my favorite expressions in hockey. There are two ways to get the puck where you want it to go. You can pass it there or you can skate it there. In an ideal world, your power play is going to have both. You're going to be skating the puck and you're going to be passing the puck at various points to create defensive conflict, to force guys to make decisions. Do I go with the puck or do I stay in my spot? And those split-second decisions are where the openings that create cross-seam passes and high-danger chances come from. I talk about this quite often. I've definitely made this allusion before. You think about how the Earth is rotating on its axis, how we get days in the week, how we get days and nights. And then it's orbiting the sun. That's the way you want to think about the power play. Not only do you want the puck moving around the perimeter of the offensive zone, you want the skaters moving around, intersecting and interjecting with each other to create defensive conflict. Because the more movement there is, the more likely it is you're going to catch somebody out of position and create a good chance. And to be fair, David Rittich makes an incredible save on Draisaitl there. That probably should be a goal. The Draisaitl one-timer, the cross-seam pass, that should go in most of the time. And that's what I mean when I say most of the time the Oilers probably find a way to win this game. They out-talent the Islanders. They survive. But the Islanders had a little bit of juice in them, and it's been a clunky start for the Devils as well. I don't think that's news to anyone. They are down both goalies, if I remember correctly. Both Jake Allen and Jacob Markstrom are injured at the moment, which sets up a really interesting situation for them. If I remember correctly, Nico Dawes started for them in their home opener tonight, and that's a team that's in a very weird position, the Devils, who they have very high stakes this season. There are incredibly high expectations for that organization. A general manager who's held that job for a number of years, who really needs to show signs of progress. A core that is still young in Heischer, Hughes, Bratt, Timo Meier, Luke Hughes, Simon Nemitz. Dougie Hamilton's not old by any stretch, but that's a team that needs to start making hay, and they are in a weird situation as far as their direction, because they won tonight against the Panthers. They're 3-1 so far through their first 4 games. I don't know what to make of the Devils yet on a grand scale. What I will say is the Devils are fast, and the Oilers are not a particularly quick team. I think once you get past McDavid in particular, you lose a lot of the raw foot speed you need to be able to be effective. And I'm very curious to see how, coming off of the Oilers' first bad game of the year, how Chris Knoblauch responds. Is this just a matter of we need to give these guys more time to feel each other out, to build chemistry, and the longer we let these guys play with each other, the more likely it is we're going to get where we want? Or are we going to see some reaction? Will we see Noah Phillip draw in? Will we see Curtis Lazar draw in? Alec Regula, Jake Wallman, both candidates to come back in. Wallman had been purported to be able to come back on Thursday night against the Islanders, but ultimately the Oilers decided against that. And I want to see this lineup start to come together. And I really like Frederick, Kapanen, and Podkolzin as the third line. I have no problem with that. I'm not sure about Roslovic in the top 6, but I understand why. I'm not sure about Ryan Nugent-Hopkins in the top 6 either. I'm just going to be honest with you. I know Nuge had a goal. He looked a little bit better tonight than he has. I don't know if the offensive chance generation, the offensive output is going to be there from Nuge to the degree the Oilers are going to need if they're going to go where they want to go. And that's the awkward part of this now. Can you really play Nuge and Adam Henrique in your bottom 6 at like $9 million combined? And I know the coach isn't supposed to be thinking about cap hits and isn't supposed to be thinking about doling out responsibility in that way, if anything. And look, I know Patrick Waugh said it in a canned quote that very much was not the case because he did not play a lot of minutes tonight about Matthew Schaefer, but he said, and obviously it's a canned quote, it's coach speak, he is not giving me a choice. He is playing so well, I need to play him. Of course, he's playing with Scott Mayfield. Tony DeAngelo is getting more minutes than him. That is not really forcing your hand all of that much, but that's what I want to see from the Oilers. I want to see guys making Chris Knobloch make a decision that it comes to that head where he's playing better than this guy and his reputation, his track record, that doesn't matter. I need to ride the hot hand right now. And that was kind of the crux of that idea for the hierarchy of forwards episode we did on Thursday, because this is a team that has 10 forwards right now who could effectively play anywhere in the lineup. And if you want to throw Noah Phillip and Curtis Lazar in there, that's 12 forwards who could play anywhere behind McDavid and Draisaitl or with McDavid and Draisaitl. And it is a very unique roster construction in that respect, that this is a team that effectively has 9 bottom 6 forwards. And then when Zach Hyman comes back, they'll have 8 bottom 6 forwards. But this is a team right now that needs to figure out how it wants to play. And you got a good game against Vancouver, who looks dreadful, just candidly. Vancouver looks like an awful hockey team. They are not playing well. And that's obviously the best game the Oilers have played. They won that game. They won against the Rangers in what was a clunky game. And they didn't play great in that game either, but they won. And I said after the game on Tuesday when I got home, good teams find ways to win games they don't play well. That's what I expected from them tonight. And I know I opened the show saying I'm not worried. I'm not worried. It's October 16th. Plenty of time to worry. That will do it for today's edition of Locked On Oilers. If you could be so kind, please subscribe to the show wherever you get your podcasts. If you happen to be listening on Apple or Spotify, a 5-star review would be greatly appreciated. If you're watching over on YouTube, hit that subscribe button. We're coming up on 1,600 subscribers, which is crazy because when I took over this channel, we were nowhere near that. So it'd be greatly appreciated. Thank you so much to everybody who made Locked On Oilers their first listen of the day. What am I talking about? Coming up on 2,600 followers, not 1,600 followers. I'm crazy. Don't mind me. Thank you so much to everyone that made Locked On Oilers their first listen of the day. Locked On Oilers, where we've got your team covered every day. Be sure to check out Locked On NHL and Locked On NHL Game Night to keep you in the loop with what's happening around the league. Everyone have a safe and fun weekend. I will talk to you guys on Monday. Until then, let's go Oilers.